We're going to go to Kamala, but first, before we talk about Kamala Harris, of course, the man who picked Kamala Harris, former vice president, that's a scary phrase, Joseph Biden, This Week in Biden.
Go, you know the thing.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Wait, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Okay. Speaking of plight, let's go to the... biracial. I always have to check my notes.
Sure, right.
Just like Joe Biden had to check his notes, you found this when he was announcing, I think we have an overlay, announced Senator Kamala Harris for vice president. He had to have a script and a giant picture of her face. Can you see that? The only thing missing is a giant yellow, bring that back up, is a giant yellow arrow. It says, don't say Tulsi.
There's so much going on in that picture. You know, you have... I can't quite make out. He's holding the phone upside down. He's talking to her on the phone. Is he talking to her on the phone and Zoom? I'm not exactly sure. He has a transcript. Even if you look at the little comic he has on his desk, I don't know if we have this. I think I sent it earlier, a zoomed in example of it. But whether or not you can see it, it's a Hagar the Horrible.
Okay.
And it's him saying, yelling at the heavens, "Why me?" And then this voice comes back and says, "Why not you?"
Right.
And so I really feel like that's a cry for help. Like, he's just like putting that on there, like, why me? Please not.
Just that subtle, he's like, I don't know what to do. I can't really say that I have a problem because I can't speak right.
Right.
I'll just let Hagar the Horrible say it.
And because of all the facelifts, he can't blink more. So he's just like,
Right.
kill me. Everyone should unilaterally dislike her. I will give you a reason as to why the left will despise her, or at least they should if they're being consistent right now with these riots / peaceful protests. And of course, the right should not be happy, or I don't think will be very happy. So the New York Times wrote that she was a pragmatic moderate. So that would seem like, oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, all right, Kamala Harris, she's a pragmatic moderate, and we'll get to her criminal justice history, which is really to the right of Rudy Giuliani, and maybe that's what they were doing to tip the scales. But on everything else, what do we have here? Obviously, universal health care. She supported after-birth abortion. I know you might think, well, that's actually we're exaggerating.
Sure.
No. It's not just Northam blackface. It, too, is Kamala Harris. Supports after-birth abortion. The Green New Deal she supported. Keep in mind, that was a 5-page bill with sweeping legislation that said, and also the Justice for All People. Against fracking, of course, and she co-sponsored a bill to force schools to let transgender athletes compete in women's sports. She was actually ranked from GovTrack the furthest left Democrat candidate that there is.
Oh, wow.
They said that he would lose the ethnic vote, the minority vote. They didn't just say black vote. They said he would lose the person of color vote. Keep in mind, that's what they were saying about Joe Biden. So if he picked a woman, it wouldn't be enough. Then he picked Kamala Harris. And then when you see the media go, actually, she's a pragmatic moderate, the left goes, we don't want moderate. We want radical change. For reference, tune into the Young Turks at any single point in their channel, or John Oliver.
Right.
And then the problem is now when we understand what she's actually about, everyone else in the country is going to say, we don't want it. So there's no winning right now at this point. I'm just wondering if Joe Biden will even make it to November. Speaking of whom, let's actually kind of the only highlights, people forget this, during the debates, Kamala Harris, when we watched those debates, I said, she drank her milk tonight. She came in ready to fight. She only really went after Tulsi Gabbard a little bit, but it didn't work. But one night she came out and went after Joe Biden hard. So the vice presidential candidate, let's see her thoughts on the guy at the top of the ticket.
But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
What am I going to eat?
And
he's like, how sad should I look?
That, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
I believe them, and I respect
double cross.
them being able to tell their story and having the courage to do it.
Do you believe that the vice president should enter this race?
He's going to have to make that decision for himself. I wouldn't tell him what to do.
There's a difference between just saying, I don't agree with this person's policies, and now running on the ticket with someone who you basically said, I believe the women who've accused him of sexual assault, and he supported segregation.
This is my guy.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? I'm going to be on the ticket with a rapist Jim Crow. That's my guy. Here's another fast fact. Well, it's not really a fast fact. It's just a fact. She is the descendant of slave owners, Kamala Harris. Now, here's the thing.
That's awkward.
It is awkward. Now, I remember asking Reg this morning, I said, can we verify this? And I went to Snopes, and Snopes, you know, they really want to say false, though.
Yeah.
And they said unverified. Well, do you think they would apply that same standard to someone else if it was, let's say, Donald Trump's father wrote in 2018 an op-ed bragging that he was a slave owner? I have a quote right here. "My roots go back within my lifetime to my paternal grandmother, Miss Christina Brown, descendant of Hamilton Brown, who is on record as plantation and slave owner and founder of Brownstown." That's almost as bad as white settlement.
Yes.
Which is an actual city. He was out there bragging about it, the dad about slavery. So can we verify it? Not exactly, but we know that Kamala Harris hasn't denied it. And even Snopes is like, your guess is as good as mine? Well, I don't know. Is your guess as good as her dad's? I'm willing to bet he did a 23andMe.
Ancestry.com?
So
He's proud of
He's
that.
proud of it.
He loves it.
He's like, think about this for a second. When they accuse people of being tone deaf because you're white,
Man.
a black man from Jamaica
Wow.
bragging about a town named after his slave owner in a plantation. I mean, you just think he, like, someone might have told. Did he have anyone proofread this? Like, you know what? Hey, you know what, Mr. Harris, you might want to. I highlighted some portions in red. That's the best part about the subservience and
I worked so hard on that.
that's what we want. Here's another issue. As a prosecutor, while we're talking about Black Lives Matter and the riots, the violent riots, she kept inmates jailed for longer to use them as cheap labor. She supported the death penalty, which may surprise people. And she incarcerated over 1,500 people for marijuana offenses. So if we're talking about moving the needle forward for the potheads who just want to get blitzed, she too is not your candidate. Can you guys explain to this to people who may not be up on the nerdiness of the prison sentences?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the basic scenario there was that nonviolent offenders were supposed to be eligible for parole after serving half their sentence, right? Because you've got crowded prisons, et cetera. And she wanted to keep them in to use for cheap labor. So essentially,
That's
another form of slavery, right?
Yeah,
you might say.
I don't know how that flew in San Francisco. How she basically extended prisoner sentences to use them as cheap labor, and also put in nonviolent pot users. How did that happen at all? Did she just was it just because she was dating Willie Brown? Did she just sort of slide in under the radar? What happened there? Who was she banging to make nonviolent drug offenders end up in prison in San Francisco? You could smoke a joint in the foyer of the police precinct in San Francisco, and no one would bat an eye, right? She would be the lady who was locking up nonviolent black offenders and extending their sentences, running against Donald Trump, who actually commuted sentences and introduced legislation that eases penalties on nonviolent drug offenders, despite the fact that he's a teetotaler. Who would have thought that the most moderate Democrat that we have, according to the New York Times, actually is to the right of Attila the Hun when it comes to criminal justice? Though, of course, she's changed that now because she listened to some Tupac at a time before he was born.
Right.
And you smoked a little weed. Don't forget about that.
I smoked a little weed. Really? Was it rolled by a slave? Here's another one. We're talking about criminal justice. It's just the attitude that she has, in case you're thinking, well, this could be taken out of context. Maybe she actually really is about criminal justice reform and about being more lenient, about being more compassionate. Here we have a clip, thank you, Reg, for finding this, where she laughed about prosecuting the parents of children who committed truancy violations, meaning they were skipping class.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
She's so happy with herself.
This was a little controversial.
Like she invented the light bulb.
And frankly, my staff went bananas. They were very concerned. We sent it out.
Because it's a horrible idea.
A friend of mine actually
She
called
went
me and
bananas,
said, Kamala, my wife got the letter. She freaked out. She brought all the kids into the living room, held up the letter, said, if you don't go to school, Kamala's going to put you and me in jail. Yes, we achieved intended effect.
Yeah, you did. You scared people with the arm of the law that you had no authority to wield. You crazy wench. And she's talking like it's a pop-up book. Like, we were saying that if the kids didn't listen to their parents, we were going to put them in the clink as though it was on par with grand larceny. Can someone get me more sherry? No, you crazy